So many people across the globe have Scottish surnames, and some don't even realise it. So in this video we're going to look at the origin and meaning of 13 popular clan surnames. Now my surname is MacMillan, which is the best surname if you ask me, so let's start here. What do we know about the origin and meaning of the name MacMillan? Now the Mac or Mick part will obviously refer to many other Scottish surnames as well. As many of you will know, it is simply a Gaelic prefix meaning son of. I should also note that surnames only started to become common in Scotland during the 12th to 14th centuries, though their adoption varied widely by region and social class. In relation to Clan McMillan then, the name comes from the Gaelic name MacMillan, which means son of the bald one or son of the tonsured servant. Some other branches of the family preferred MacGregor, which had a similar meaning, son of the servant of the tonsured one. This speaks to a religious origin. Tonsure, of course, is the practice of shaving some or all of your hair as a sign of religious devotion. Celtic priests had a distinctive tonsure though. They shaved the front of their heads, unlike the Romans, who shaved a ring around the crown. Now, Clan MacMillan is said to be descended from the Celtic Church as well as an ancient royal house. In the 12th century, a man called Cormac was made the Bishop of Decoded. He is said to have had a son called Gaelic, meaning servant of Christ, who is an early ancestor of the MacMillan clan. As a religious man, he is said to have worn the tonsure. His descendants thus became known as the sons of the tonsured servant, or the MacMillans we know today. And if you're wondering, in the Celtic Church at this time, clergy were often allowed to marry and have families. I should also note that there are multiple variations of this general story, but they all relate to this man, Gaelic and the religious origin of the name in general. Now the line of Gaelic is also said to have a royal connection, according to some clan traditions at least. Gaelic is said to be a descendant of Macbeth, King of Scotland in the 11th century, an inspiration to Shakespeare of course. Now, Clan MacMillan supported Robert the Bruce during the Wars of Scottish Independence, but later supported the Lord of the Isles in opposition to the Scottish Crown. The clan has been associated with the land around Knapdale on the west coast of Scotland for centuries, and Castle Sween is the historic seat of this clan. One notable MacMillan down through history is Kirkpatrick MacMillan. He was the first to invent the pedal-driven bicycle in 1839, known as the treadle bicycle. He never patented his invention though, and there is some debate about all this. Now another notable MacMillan that I didn't even realise before researching this video was the late great Scottish actor Robbie Coltrane. He of course played Hagrid in Harry Potter, as well as various other roles, including in James Bond films. His real name was actually Anthony Robert McMillan, and he only adopted Robbie Coltrane as a stage name. Next up is Clan Fraser, and if you have a Scottish surname, please let me know in the comments below. Now the origins of the name Fraser aren't 100% clear, but they do seem to have a French-Norman origin. The name possibly derives from the French word for strawberry, fraise. Another common potential story is that it comes from a place in Anjou, France, called La Fraisière. There are various other theories though as to the name's origin. One interesting point to note is that the crest of Clan Fraser features a strawberry plant. This could bolster the credibility of the strawberry meaning, or some relationship to it at least, and let me know your thoughts below. Now there are two main Clan Frasers in Scotland who are separate but share some common ancestry. There is the Scottish Lowlands Clan Fraser, which is not to be confused with the Clan Fraser of Lovat, associated with lands around Inverness to the north. An early member of the Frasers was a man called Simon Fraser, who lived between around 1160 and 1202. He held lands at Keith in East Lothian. A much later Simon Fraser was the 11th Lord Lovat, who was the last man in Britain to be executed by beheading in 1747. He was convicted of high treason for his role in the Jacobite Rising of 1745. In his final moments, after a nearby balcony collapsed with spectators, Fraser burst out laughing. This episode is said to be the origin of the expression, laughing your head off, although some say it is older than this, but an interesting story regardless. Outside of Scotland, the surname Fraser is found in places with many people who have Scottish ancestry, such as Canada, the United States, Australia and New Zealand. Next up is Clan Armstrong. Now the name Armstrong comes from a Middle English term that means someone who is strong in the arm. One origin story of Clan Armstrong says that the name comes from an act of strength from a man called Fairbairn. It is said that, dressed in full armour, he lifted the king onto his horse with one arm after the king's horse had been killed under him in battle. There is another common origin story however. This one says that the first man with the name Armstrong was Siward Bjorn, or Sword Warrior, who was also known as Siward Diggory, meaning sword strong arm. He was the Earl of Northumbria in the 11th century. He was also potentially related to King Canute, the ruler of the North Sea Empire. Now, the first recorded person with the actual surname Armstrong is likely Adam Armstrong, who appears in records from around 1235 to 1240 in Liddesdale in the Scottish borders. And we know that the Armstrongs were powerful border reivers along the Scottish-English border for centuries. By the 16th century, the Armstrongs were one of the most powerful clans in the borders, sometimes fielding over 3,000 men in battle. And Johnny Armstrong, executed by King James V in 1530, is a legendary figure of this clan. The border reivers came under serious pressure after the Union of Crowns in 1603, however, resulting in many border clans being moved to places like Ireland. For many families, this didn't last too long, and they migrated to North America. This is why you see this surname in many places like the US today. And on that note, one of the most famous people in American history bears this clan's name, Neil Armstrong, of course. What about Clan MacDonald though? Well, the surname MacDonald comes from the Gaelic name MacDonald, meaning son of Donald, with Donald itself derived from the Old Gaelic elements meaning world ruler or mighty one. The name traces back to the early 13th century to Donald, son of Reginald. Now, Donald was actually the grandson of Somerled, the famed Norse Gaelic warlord. Somerled's descendants through Donald became the powerful Clan Donald, or MacDonald, one of the largest and most influential clans in Scottish history. The MacDonalds held the prestigious title of Lords of the Isles, ruling over the Hebrides and western coastal regions with near sovereign power, until the Crown absorbed the title in the 15th century. The clan eventually divided into several major branches. Today, the MacDonald name remains one of the most widely recognised Scottish surnames, deeply tied to the Western Highlands and Islands of Scotland. Now, the next name we're going to look at today is Clan Robertson. Now, the name Robertson obviously just means son of Robert, with the personal name Robert actually coming from an old German word that means bright fame or famous ruler. The name Robert became more common in Scotland after the Normans. The Robertson clan are also known by their Gaelic name, Clan Donica though, which means children of Duncan. Why is this though? Why Robertson and Duncan? Why two names in relation to the same clan? Well, if we start with the Duncan element first, there are basically two main theories as to where this comes from. The first is that they are descended from Crinan, Lord of Atholl, from whom sprang the royal house of Duncan I, the King of the Scots. He is the historical basis of the King Duncan in Shakespeare's play Macbeth. The second theory is that it comes from an ancestor, a later ancestor called Duncan, who was a staunch supporter of Robert the Bruce. What we are more certain of though is where the Robertson name comes from. It comes from Robert Rhiac, the clan chief during the first half of the 15th century. Robert was known for his intense loyalty to the Stuarts, and Rhiac was responsible for capturing the murderers of King James I, who was assassinated in 1437. For his loyalty, he was rewarded by the crown. The clan was also granted the right to include a hand holding an imperial crown in their crest, and you can still see this today. Descendants of Robert Rhiac became known as the Robertsons. The clan is primarily associated with the Central Highlands, particularly the region of Perthshire. Now, Clan MacLeod is another very powerful Scottish clan, but what do we know about the origins and the meaning of the clan surname MacLeod? Well, before we look at that, if you're enjoying this video, please consider subscribing. And if you would like access to member-only videos, please check out my Patreon page, or if you prefer everything on one platform, please check out the members area on YouTube. Just click the join button to find out more information. I will also put links in the description below. Thank you, and now on with the video. Now, the surname MacLeod means the son of Loud. The name Loud is believed to come from an Old Norse origin, likely derived from a Norse word, meaning ugly or grim. Though in context, it likely carried a more noble or formidable connotation. The first known figure to bear this name was a Norse Gaelic chieftain who lived in the 13th century, and is considered the founder of Clan MacLeod. Loud was likely descended from the Norse rulers of the Hebrides and the Isle of Man, and his descendants went on to form two main branches, the MacLeods of Harris and Skye and the MacLeods of Lewis. The clan is historically associated with the Isle of Skye, as well as Lewis, Harris and other parts of the Outer Hebrides. The most iconic stronghold of the clan is Dunvegan Castle in the Isle of Skye, which has been the ancestral home of the chiefs of Clan MacLeod for over 800 years. One of the clan's most treasured relics is the fairy flag of Dunvegan. It is said to have been woven by fairies and to possess magical properties. Now next up is Clan Mackay. Now the name Mackay comes from the Gaelic name Mackay, meaning son of E. E is an ancient Celtic personal name, meaning fire or fiery one. Exactly who this name comes from isn't 100% clear. Some point to a man named Aed, Mormor of Moray, who died around 1129. He was married to the daughter of Lulic, the king of Alapa between 1057 and 1058. Lulic in turn was actually the stepson of Macbeth. Others point to a man who lived in the 13th century. He was called Lai Mackay, who was possibly the first chief of Clan Mackay. It was around this time that the name Mackay started being used properly. One of his sons, for instance, was called Morgan Mackay. So pinpointing the exact origins of Clan Mackay is difficult, but it is probably connected to these two individuals in some way, especially the latter. The surname was also spelt more like Mackay before Mackay became more common. The clan went on to hold lands in the very north of Scotland, around Strathnaver, and the ancient seat of the chief of Clan Mackay was at Castle Varick. What about Clan Anderson though? Well, the name Anderson obviously means just son of Andrew, with the name Andrew itself coming from a Greek origin, Andreas, meaning manly or brave. It became widespread in Scotland due to the popularity of St Andrew, the country's patron saint. As such, Anderson likely arose independently in several areas rather than from a single common ancestor. The first recorded spelling of the family name, however, may be that of Rogerus Anderson, which was dated to 1272 in the poll tax returns of Yorkshire. Another early mention of this name came in 1296. This was when David Luffiz Andrew of Peebles and Duncan Fitz Andrew of Dumfries both took an oath of fealty to Edward I of England at the onset of the First Scottish War of Independence. These names were recorded in the Ragman Rolls, a collection of documents by which the nobility and gentry of Scotland subscribed allegiance to King Edward I. The name then evolved more into the Anderson spelling we recognise today over time. One interesting Anderson to note in history was the Aberdeen-born Alexander Anderson. He was a brilliant mathematician who published works on geometry and algebra in Paris between 1612 and 1619. Clan Anderson is associated with the lowlands of Scotland. And speaking of the First Scottish War of Independence, this leads us nicely on to Clan Wallace. Now the surname Wallace likely originates from the Old French and Latin term Lou, meaning the Welshman or foreigner. This was likely used in medieval Scotland to describe someone of Welsh or Brythonic origin, particularly from the Kingdom of Strathclyde. This was because the people of Strathclyde spoke Cumbric, which was closely related to Old Welsh. Strathclyde was in a part of Britain that the Welsh tribes referred to as the Hen or Glaive or the Old North. The first member of Clan Wallace appears in the pages of Scotland's history books in 1160. This was when Richard Wallensis witnessed a charter by Alan, son of Walter the High Steward of Scotland. The steward was given lands in Ayrshire by King David, and Wallace also settled in this area. His name survives in the town and parish of Riccarton in East Ayrshire, which is a corruption of Richard's town. The Wallace family is associated with Ayrshire down through history, as well as the village of Elderslie in Renfrewshire. This village is in fact the supposed birthplace of William Wallace, the most famous son of Clan Wallace. This is the Wallace Oak. It was a great oak tree that once stood in Elderslie. A famous tale says that Wallace hid inside the tree to escape English soldiers. Clan Wallace is linked to various other areas and castles around Ayrshire, including Craigie Castle near Kilmarnock. Next up is Clan MacGregor. Now the surname MacGregor comes from a Gaelic name, MacGregor, meaning son of Gregor, with Gregor being the Gaelic form of Gregory. This name is of Greek origin and means watchful or vigilant. However, the Latin form Gregorius came to be associated with Grex Gregis, or flock herd, under the influence of the Christian image of the Good Shepherd. Clan tradition holds that the MacGregors descend from Gregor MacAlpin, a 9th century figure said to be the son of Alpin. Now, Alpin was a supposed king of Dalriada, an ancient kingdom that included parts of Ireland and Scotland. Another one of his sons was Kenneth MacAlpin, who unified the Gaels and the Picts to create the Kingdom of Alapa in 843, the embryonic kingdom of Scotland. If this origin story is true, and it is debated, it would make the MacGregors one of the few that claims royal blood through the ancient kings of Dalriada and early Scotland. Their motto, "Royal is my race," reflects this ancestral pride. The first recorded use of the MacGregor surname dates to the 13th century. The first chief of this clan is usually considered to be Gregor of the Golden Bridles MacGregor of Glenorchy, who lived in the 14th century. Known for their fierce independence and turbulent history, the MacGregors were outlawed multiple times by the Scottish Crown, and the name itself was actually banned for much of the 17th century. One of the most famous members of this clan was Rob Roy MacGregor, of course. Now, another powerful Scottish clan is Clan Mackintosh. Now, the name Mackintosh comes from the Gaelic name Mackintosh, which means son of the leader or son of the chief. The name is believed to originate from a 12th century figure named Shaw Macduff, who was the second son of the Earls of Fife. In 1160, Shaw Macduff accompanied Malcolm IV of Scotland on an expedition to suppress a rebellion in Murrayshire. Shortly after this, he was also made Constable of Inverness Castle and was granted lands in the Findhorn Valley, just east of Inverness. These lands became the heartland of the clan. Now, Shaw was known at this time as the son of the chief in Gaelic, or Mackintosh, hence why the name Mackintosh developed. Clan Mackintosh rose to power in the Central Highlands and became a key member of the powerful Clan Chattan Confederation, a coalition of allied clans. One such clan is Shaw, which also traces its origin back to Shaw Macduff. The ancestral seat of Clan Mackintosh is Moy Hall, which was built around 1700 to replace their historical seat, Moy Castle. What about Clan Hamilton though? Well, the earliest known ancestor is Walter Fitzgilbert of Hambledon. He was a nobleman who pledged loyalty to Robert the Bruce during the Wars of Independence and was rewarded with lands in Lanarkshire. Now, Fitzgilbert is a Norman French surname that means son of Gilbert, so there was this Norman connection and his roots somewhere. The family settled in northern England first though, before moving north into Scotland. The name Hamilton is thought to come from a place name, perhaps a village in Leicestershire, or some argue Northumberland. This was named in Old English something like Hameldon, Hamel meaning crooked, and Dun meaning hill. The family took this name into Scotland, and over time it became known as the Hamilton we recognise today. The town of Hamilton near Glasgow takes its name from the Hamilton family. Walter Fitzgilbert of Hambledon is considered the founder of the House of Hamilton, which grew to become one of the most powerful noble families in Scotland. They became Dukes of Hamilton and played key roles in Scottish and British political life for centuries. Their principal seat was Hamilton Palace, once the largest non-royal residence in Scotland, although it was demolished in the 20th century. The name Hamilton is very popular today in Scotland and abroad. Many prominent people down through history have also had this surname. One of the most famous is Alexander Hamilton, of course, one of the founding fathers in the US who served as the first Secretary of the Treasury. Next up is Clan MacIntyre. Now, the name MacIntyre comes from the Gaelic name Mackintyre, which means son of the carpenter or craftsman. Their origins are quite mysterious, however. One common origin story is that they're descended from a nephew of Somerled called Maurice MacNeill. Somerled, of course, was a mid-12th century Norse Gaelic lord who, through martial alliance and military conquest, rose in prominence to create the Kingdom of Argyll and Isles. The story goes that Maurice used Machiavellian tactics to help Somerled secure a strategic marriage with the daughter of Olaf the Red, King of Man and Isles. On way to a raid on Skye, Maurice sabotaged King Olaf's galley by boring holes in the hull, which he then plugged when Olaf agreed to the marriage. Maurice was therefore known as the Wright or Carpenter, and found high favour with his uncle. His descendants thus became known as the Sons of the Carpenter, or MacIntyres. The MacIntyres went on to settle in Glennoe and served as hereditary foresters for the Lords of Lauren. Now, there are obviously various other Scottish clans, but I have made a 3-part series on the DNA of Scottish clans where I go through the origins and the meaning of the names of various different clans. Some of these clans are like Campbell, Stewart, Bruce, and various other ones. And speaking of part 1 of this series, I do actually go to Castle Campbell, make a video on location there, and to watch that, please click here. Thanks for watching, please let me know your thoughts below, and please let me know if you have a Scottish surname and your clan connections in general. But yeah, thanks again for watching. If you would like to get member-only videos, please check out my Patreon page or the YouTube members area just by clicking the join button. But yeah, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.